Hi, I'm going to do my video on the article that we read about critical race theory and then about the film we watched about the power of illusion. And so, first, I'll answer the first question in our response, which will be for the article by Lancet and Billings and Tate introduced critical race theory to the academic community and lays out the major tenets to demonstrate the silence of race in the U.S. culture, including its enduring legacy. So, what areas articulate did you find interesting, intriguing, or troublesome, and why? What I found interesting in our article reading was about the property tax, on how it reflects to our education. And the portion that I found that was interesting was what I put right here about the portion about property relates to education in explicit and implicit ways. Recurring discussions about property tax indicate that more affluent communities, which have higher values, hence higher tax assessments, resent paying for a public system whose clientele is largely non-white and poor. In the simplest of equation, those with better property are entitled to better schools. So that's something I find really troublesome within me, for me, because I grew up in an area where we didn't have that opportunity, right? We didn't have the property tax was lower, so that meant that our education wasn't as well equipped. So that meant that what that meant for my mother was that she had to send me out to a district or a school which had better education, just because our area and the way where we lived didn't really fit that, didn't give us the education that we were looking for. And so I find it very troublesome because I think about all the young kids that are out there who live in those communities who are forced to go to those schools. They are not equipped, are not ready to go to higher education based on what school district they live in, based on a property tax. So that's really troublesome to me. And so when I read through it, the article it really touched my it really made me feel a certain way about it, especially about how it really gives only for those students who are of color, right? Because those students of color are majority of the ones who are living in those communities who have lower property tax. So when you have lower property tax, that means that you're going to a school that's not going to be as equipped. And so I love the story that, or the example they presented in the article about the teenage son and the friend who went to two different high schools. Who went to one that was more affluent, and another one who went to a school that wasn't affluent, was in a low income community. And he talks about the different things that they are equipped with when they go to those schools. And these are the things that are happening every day in American society, right? And that we have the ability, we have the tools, we have the resources to educate all our children in the same equal layer, but based on these rules and these guidelines, we don't. And so, as I highlighted here, I talked about the boy attending the white middle class school, had his choice of many foreign languages: Spanish, French, German, Latin, Greek, Italian, Chinese, Japanese. His mathematics offer included algebra, geometry, trigonometry, calculus, statistics, general math, and business math. So just think about that. Just going to a school that had um, that was majority just that was just the population was majority white. That they had all those opportunities, right? Especially in the foreign language, they have opportunity to learn a plethora of different languages, right? Latin, Greek, Italian, Chinese. So it gives students the options to be very bilingual, right? And then you think about, and then also you think about what the other boy had to encounter, right? In his school, his curriculum wasn't as broad, right? The foreign language choices were Spanish and French, which is pretty typical, right? And it makes sense to me. I mean, it does. If you're thinking about property tax and you're thinking about, okay, how we're going to pay these teachers, right? So if you work in a district where they have more funding, they have more money, so they obviously they can have teachers who can teach multiple languages. Then you can have teachers who are in a low income community, who maybe you can only find find certain teachers who could speak, who could teach Spanish and teach only French, and so it makes sense, but is it right? And then you think about, then it says here his mathematics choices were general math, business math, and algebra. So there's not even any opportunity for him to advance in math if he wanted to. If he wanted to go to calculus and trigonometry, and we know that if you do have those opportunities in high school to take those classes, what is the you have a better option to go to college, right? Because colleges now are asking for you to have advanced math, to have those understanding. And a lot of things that stop a lot of college graduates is math. And so if in high school you're only giving general math and algebra, and then say if you don't pass it, then you have to retake the algebra class again. Then by the time you graduate from high school, you're not really as equipped. And then when you go to college, you're not going to be ready to take those math courses. And so, just having those options are very reliable, if not very reliable, but very necessary for us to have. And then what I also liked here was about the differences of electives that they have. I didn't highlight this part though, but the electives they have here for the affluent school offering courses such as film, as literature, Asian studies, computer programming, and journalism, right? And then at the African American school, they had no band, had an orchestra, and had no band, orchestra, or a school newspaper, right? They didn't even have a music program, right? So if you think about those students who are if you go back to Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence, there's a lot of students out there who learn better when they actually have a musical opportunity, right? Not musical, but musical class. And so we don't give students the opportunity to enhance their own intelligence, which could be music or which it could be a school newspaper or journalism or writing. You don't give them an option for an elective. How would they be ready to be successful when they graduate from high school? And so those are the things that really caught my eye. So yeah. So why is this an issue? I wrote here, why is it an issue? This is more than an issue for me because it relates to our struggle as a people of color, how we are supposed to advance in a world that purposely degrades our ability to learn through property tax. The higher the property tax, the better the education, which exemplifies the idea of intellectual property. If I live in a neighborhood that accumulates more wealth through expertise of the community members, then the chances of my education will be eclectic, with options to expand my understanding of the world, but also provide opportunity to advance my education through a college degree or higher. Now, if I live in a neighborhood that pays less on property tax and relies on government assistance, then the chance of my education won't be very broad. I would barely obtain a high school diploma, and the chances to advance my education would not be substantial. So will not be giving me an opportunity. So I think so. Again, I go back to, what I want to do in my what I do right now as an outreach coordinator for the Martin Luther King Center. I think about the young African American students who are going to college right now. And how they're having a hard time retaining and keeping them in college because they're not prepared. And so, if you think about Sac State only has a 5% population of African American students. And so, if you only have a 5% students that go to Sac State, and you think about the numbers, out of 32,000 students at our school, we only have about maybe 2,000 of them who are African American. And then, if you think about Sacramento as itself, Sacramento has we have about, if you think about American society itself, it's a 12% of our population is African American. And so, and then you think about California, you think about Sacramento, Sacramento is very diverse. And so for us to only have 2,000 students who are African American, why is that? What is the issue behind that? And a lot of it is because they're not prepared when they go to high school. And so that's why what I spoke about the property value, the property tax based on the intellectual intelligence or intellectual property or intellectual property, then what that does, it kind of already provides or actually gives you your future before you even know it. Depending on where you live is really what's going to determine what you're going to do in the next 4 or 5 years or 10 years. If you live in a community where you're going to have better education, most likely you're going to be a CEO or you're going to work in a company somewhere. If you live live in a community that doesn't have have low property tax, most likely you're going to be doing a blue collar job, right? Working at doing mechanical labor work or something like that. And so the chances, are we really being equal? Are we really showing equality? I don't think so. All right. So, how does it challenge my thinking of race? It doesn't really challenge my thinking of race, but challenge the perspective how we see equality in America, how we systematically create a way to keep certain people based in a particular class based on their ethnicity. As the movie Race, The Power of Illusion stated in the film, that race is only a social concept that we created based on prejudice. How we think about each other through religion, culture, and look is completely inappropriate and degrading. The American culture is built on working with each other to make change, but we forgot what that truly means once we reach that success. We are blind to the needs of others and consequently constantly incorporates the independent strategy of picking yourself up on your own bootstrap, as if we as if we can as if we can't sacrifice for others in order to reach the equality that we speak strongly about. This way of thinking allows me to inclusion create inclusion in my own curriculum as a instructional designer and instructional um, as an educational my educational technology program. It allows me when I do my curriculum that in order to benefit each student to the best of their ability, not based on what society determines them to be. And so that's how I challenge. That's how I challenge um, challenge my way of thinking of race. And so, really based on that, we don't need to be attacking each other, but helping each other in different ways, and not just thinking, oh, okay, well, we're at this level of success. How can we find policies or rules to keep one class beneath us based on their race and based on what they look like? And so, and it's again, race is not really what we're looking at. We're really just thinking about prejudice, thinking about the culture, the religion, and we're not just. And so, just more just about color. Uh, Number two, the film shows. So I'm gonna answer number two on our response. All right. Number two, the film shows how government policy have created unfair advantages for whites in the past, resulting in substantial wealth gap between whites and non-whites. What examples of disparity exist in your community today? Will the wealth gap go away if we ignore race? In South Sacramento. So I want to talk about South Sacramento. How in that community that I lived in, it was more ethnicity, right? It was just more people, more African American, more. It was Asian. It was Latino, and so we live in an area where it was majority all um, uh, uh, different diverse communities, and so the low socioeconomic values, and so a lot of times in those communities there was a lot of stealing, right? Fights. It was at night. It was helicopters, right? People would get into a lot of different trouble because of the area that we did live in, right? So the people who live in those areas didn't have as much, and so when I think about how the government policies have created unfair advantages, it created an unfair advantage in that community because they couldn't, because the education, right? The education that they was getting or the opportunity they was getting wasn't provided for them, right? Jobs wasn't provided in that community, right? If you didn't have a car, you could only find a job within that or within the radius that you live, and so they didn't have companies or um, um, that provide salaries and benefits, and so that really mattered. Really played a key part in that area in South Sacramento. And so that's how when I watched the film, I thought about that. I thought about me living in South Sacramento and how that was for me, and then how that affected my mindset. And then when I was about 15 or 16, I had the opportunity to move to Elk Grove. And so what I noticed about living in Elk Grove was definitely the ethnicity, right? It wasn't as diverse as it was when I lived in South Sacramento, right? And so I remember once that my father, we just moved into our house, and me was getting everything out, we was packing, we was unpacking everything, and was outside the neighborhood. And I remember my little brother was outside, and he was screaming. He wasn't screaming, but maybe just maybe raising his voice and talking or whatever the case may be. And so we had a neighbor who lived down the street, and he walked all the way down to our house and told me and my brothers and my dad that we need to quiet down in this neighborhood, right? And my dad looked at him and said, "Why do we have to quiet down?" He told him that he was a white guy, obviously, and so he was telling us that we need to quiet down. And he's like, "We don't do that in this neighborhood. We don't make noise." My dad looked at him and said, "You better go get out of my face and go back to your house." Right? Told him to go back. And then when he left, my dad told me that we have to be careful about how people think about it, and we always have to stand up for ourselves. And so by him doing that, it made me feel like, wow, like people really have that mentality that even though we are not the same culturally, or have the same because we look different, people already want to kind of tell you how to live in a certain neighborhood. Oh, we don't make noise like that in this neighborhood. And really have the audacity to tell us that. And my dad, being a man that he is, he's not going to accept that. So I remember that happening, and remembering and understanding the differences between white and black, and how they see us. And then also they have better schools, especially in the Elk Grove area and district. It has the number one school. My brothers had the opportunity to go to schools that was actually in their own neighborhood. So they went to Franklin High School, they went to Toby Johnson, and they got good education. And so my mom didn't have to move them to different areas. They could just walk up the street. And so that's the benefits of what my brothers had, right? They had the benefits of just going right up the street to Franklin High School or Toby Johnson. But for me, even though it's my last year in high school, my mom didn't want to utilize my last year of high school in a new community, and so I still drove back to South Sacramento to finish up the last year of my high school at McClatchy. But I remember that my brothers really had a good school with better teachers, and so that was good. And then I also remember one of the biggest things was like no helicopters, right? And so that was like the biggest thing for me, because I remember living in South Sacramento that was a huge thing. Like late at night, all you hear is helicopters. You hear people on the microphone, everybody stay in your house. We're looking for 5'5", 5'2", Hispanic, African American, Hispanic and African American male. Please stay in your house. Like you hear things like that all the time, and so when you go to a community where you don't have to hear that, And Elk Grove was just growing at that time, so it was still like a lot of smells outside, like a lot of cow manure. I remember that. But I do remember. But that was not as good. But I do remember that it was no more helicopter, no more noises. It was really like we were isolated to the world. And so, but we had a better home, a better community. And so, I was happy for that. And do I feel like the wealth gap would go away? Me in particular, I don't think that the wealth gap would not go away, only because we continue to have the same generation of people that are being developed in this world with the same mindset. We haven't progressed really, in my viewpoint. I know that since we had the integration of people of color going to the same schools as whites, even though we have that integration, we still haven't progressed in our mentality and how we treat people, because there's still people are still segregated. There's people are still clicking up, as we could say. You still have people who are who are black who hang out over there, and you have people who are white who hang over here. You have people who are Hispanic who are over here, Indians over here, or if you're a Democrat, you're over here. If you're a Republican, you're over there. So it's almost like the wealth gap won't go away because we still have the same mentality. We haven't never really changed about having equality together. Nobody wants to give anything away because I think that the way America is brought up to be a leader, to kind of go for your own, right, and be the richest person you could be. And so, since our culture is like that, the chances of us having that big of decreasing or increasing the wealth gap will not really go away. It will always be a disparity between the two because that's just not the way our culture is, in my opinion. And it will continue to happen that way if we continue to have our education policy and our property tax be based on our education. If we continue to have mentality and still think about each other as as different instead of integrating each other and learning about each other and being open minded about different situations. Until we start doing that, then the wealth gap will go away. But until that, we can't really get anywhere without actually learning and actually developing within each other. All right. And so then I'm gonna answer number 3. Comment on the idea that the U.S. is a melting pot. Sociologist Eduardo Bonell Silva says that the melting pot never included people of color, blacks, Chinese, Puerto Ricans, etc. could not melt into the pot. Now think about that phrase, melting pot. What does that imply? So if this does, okay, what does that apply? So obviously what that implies is that the melting pot, that our culture, that certain people make up the United States. And certain people give a lot of great contributions to the United States. So the melting pot is pretty much people who are contributing to the melting pot, right? And when they spoke about that, they're speaking about that in terms of the Irish, the Europeans, the Italians, Europeans, those who are white, non-white, people of color, wasn't considered the melting part of the melting pot. They didn't feel like they contribute to what the American society was or has been doing for the past 100 years, or whatever the case may be. And so they actually consider us as, we're just almost like we're just scraps or not really people who are achieving anything in the society, which is untrue. A lot of the African Americans, Hispanic, Indians were contributing a lot to society, but because they wanted to see it as just only the Irish or Italians or the ones who they could relate to more, those are the ones who they consider part of the melting pot. Right? And so, now answer this question, if this does not appropriately describe the U.S., what phrase would aptly describe the relationship between various people? I would say, give me liberty or give me death. The reason why I say that'll probably be a better phrase for us as a society because I think that's how we are. Either you give me freedom or I'm going to die for it. And that's just what it is. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful. And that's for everybody here in America. I think, and I believe that immigrants come here with that same mentality. That I'm going to be successful. I don't care what happens. I'm going to do what I can to be the best American that I can be. Right? I'm going to show strength within our culture. I want to provide a lot for the United States, but I want to make a better life for my family. That's always been the biggest thing for American society, that you want to make a better life for your family. And so give me liberty or give me death is pretty much, that's our phrase. That's our thing, right? We want to be able to, that's how we want to be able to provide for our family the best way we can through education, through working, through being successful, through whatever the case may be, we want to strive for it the best way we can. And once we reach that pinnacle success, a lot of times we forget to look back and help out others. And that's what the issue is. The biggest issue is that we don't go back. We don't try to support our students, support our young ones, support those who are our next generation, and we only think about our family and what they need, but what can society? How can we progress? And I believe that goes again with our culture, what we believe in, and how we are developed. And because this system has been working for so long, and we are considered the best country in the world, nobody really wants to change it. And so that's what I feel like. I feel like that's more of an appropriate phrase for us. Give me liberty or give me death. All right. Thank you. That's my blog for today. Bye.